So today I'm going to teach you how to create a pillow box just like this, which is perfect for small little gifts or for gift cards. So to get started, I'll just talk through the supplies. So you're going to want a piece of cardstock, which is just a scrap piece. That's going to be for creating a template. You're also going to want colored cardstock, any color of your choice, depending on the occasion that you are celebrating. You'll want a guillotine cutter. I do recommend having a cutting mat of some sort for this project. You will need a pair of scissors, a ruler if you have one, otherwise a straight edge would be just fine, a bone folder, and the last thing is going to be something that is around 6 inches in diameter. A plate is perfect, or if you happen to have a compass that can go that size, then that would work just as well. And then you will need a pencil. And if you have a 1-inch punch, this is great. It'll be coming in handy a little bit later on, and then some super tape. All right, so to start off, what we're going to do is we're going to create a template using that white cardstock that I talked about earlier. So now if you do have something that is 6 inches round, this is where you can just place this on your paper, trace it with your pencil, and you're going to want to cut it out. If you have a compass, you'll want to make sure that this is set to 3 inches so that when you place it down, it makes a 6-inch round. All right, so I'm just going to start. I'll just use my plate here. And this doesn't have to be, this could be scrap paper here. It doesn't have to be a perfect piece of paper, but you do want it to be cardstock if possible. And we just want that to be rigid for if we need to use this template multiple times. So I'm just going to cut it out. Now, if you do have a cutting machine, that could be helpful here. If you want to just do a 6-inch circle on your cutting machine. This method works just fine, but feel free to use whatever tools you have. And so the reason why we're doing this as a 6-inch round is because for the size paper that we're using and for the size pillow box that we're creating, this just happens to be the perfect curve that we need. All right, so after you've cut out your circle, you'll want to fold that in half. And we're just creating a center mark here, which will make a lot of sense later. Okay, so I've got that just in half, and we're going to place that aside for now. So the next thing you want to do is you want to grab the paper that you'll be using. So I've got my guillotine cutter here, and again, this is an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and so I can actually get 2 pillow boxes of this size with this sheet of paper. So I'm going to cut it down exactly in half. And place that aside. So this should be 8.5 long by 5.5 wide now. All right, so the next step is I want to create score lines in my cardstock. So I've got my cutting mat. This is just going to help me with scoring the paper because it is a cardstock. I do want to make sure that I have something under it so that it's a little bit easier to score. And so I'm going to score my first line just at the 1/2 inch mark. So I'm going to measure in from the left-hand side here. I'm going to measure 1/2 inch, and I'll use my bone folder to score the paper. Depending on how heavy your cardstock is here, you might want to go over that score line a couple of times. And then from that score mark, I want to measure 4 inches in. Okay, so I'm just placing it here as though my edge is at the 0, and I'm going to score at the 4-inch mark. Okay, so it should look something like this. So each of these sections is 4 inches, and then I've got the 1/2 inch hanging off the edge. Now I'm just going to place that aside for now. I want to fold these over right at those score marks and use my bone folder to really get a nice good crease here. Okay, so I folded that one, and then I also want to fold in this 1/2 inch one as well, and again get a really nice crease using your bone folder there. And ultimately this is going to fold over onto itself, so the inside, this little 1/2 inch flap is actually going to be on the inside of the fold. And just for good measure, I'm going to go over it again with my bone folder. All right, so we're going to take back our cutting mat here, and now this is where our template that we made earlier, this is where it's going to come into play. So I'm going to want to create curves up top on this side, and then another curve on this side. And so I'm using my cutting mat here, and I'm using the measurements. So the number 2 is going to be my center point. This is where that fold in our template comes in handy, because I do want to try to maintain these edges to be the same size. And so by having that center point kind of helps you in doing that. So I'm just placing my template to the top of the paper here, and I'm going to use a pencil, and I'm just going to trace my template here. So it should look something like that. And I'm going to want to do that to the other side as well. So using the template to center my circle and then tracing. Now I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut along that pencil line. Now remember, you do have this little flap folded in, so you do want to make sure that you've got a good pair of scissors that can cut through all 3 layers of cardstock here. And you'll just cut along those lines. All right, so it should look something like this now. Okay, so we are going to use that template again, but just in a little bit of a different way. So now we want to create our creases or our score lines where our little flaps are going to be folded in. So right here along this edge, we're going to use that template to create that curve again in the paper so that it can fold nicely like that. So to do that, I'm taking that handy template that we created earlier. And the best way to kind of describe this is that we want the template to sit on our paper, but opposite this curve. And so ultimately we're going to make like an almond shape here. So we've got this right-hand curve is going to be the one side, and then we're going to want to score into our paper on this side to create an opposite curve. And so to do that, I take my template and I just kind of hover it over my paper, and I try to get the template to intersect with that bottom little edge over there. And then I want to do the same thing at the top here. So I want my template to intersect with that very little corner there. And so I want to take a bone folder here and I want to score this. Again, because cardstocks aren't all created equal, if you have a really heavy cardstock, I do recommend that you go over this score line multiple times, because you want this to be a nice clean fold when it comes time to actually folding it in. So you can see I've scored, and now see how this looks like an almond? Like I want that score line to be opposite this curve here. And I'm actually going to do this on this side as well. And then I'm going to flip the whole thing over and do it on the opposite side as well. So lining up the corners with my template there, and then scoring as many times as you need to make it a really nice deep score like that. Now I'm flipping it over and doing the same thing. And this is why it helps to have a cardstock template, so this doesn't shift as you're trying to do this part here. Okay, and then the last one, flipping over, lining it up, and then scoring here. Okay, so now we've got our score lines on the front and the back. Before we adhere everything together, if you have that 1-inch punch that I mentioned earlier, you're going to want to open up your card, and I'm just going to hover this over the edge of this flap here, and I'm just going to punch out a half circle out of the cardstock, just like that. I'm going to do that to the other side as well. And so this is just so that your recipient doesn't have a tough time opening up the pillow box. Okay, so now we can stick it all together. This is that 1/2-inch edge that we folded in earlier. You're going to want to take some super tape or a really strong adhesive and lay it on that flap there. I'm actually doing it a little bit closer to the actual fold. So the edge is right here. I'm actually sticking my tape down as close to that as possible. Now with the super tape, it is very, very strong, but you do have to remove the film that is on there. Just like that. And so once that adhesive is exposed, then you'll want to fold your card over and attach it to itself. All right, so now at this point, it's looking more like our pillow box, but now we want to pop it open, just kind of using your fingers to pop it open like this. And you're going to want to use those score lines that we did earlier and fold those in. Now you want to do this very carefully because you could crumple this flap if you just do it too quickly. So I like to actually just have like my fingers on the inside and then use my thumb to just kind of like slowly from one end to the other fold this flap in. And at the same time with my left hand, I'm keeping the box sort of popped open. And that's just going to help it fold into itself. So you see how I'm just kind of like slowly going along that crease mark, and I'm just nudging it in like so. And you kind of want to just get that going. Once it's folded, then it just kind of collapses into itself. But you could use your fingernails to like really get a good crease here. And notice the first flap that I pushed in was the one with the punch in it. And then I'll flip it over and do the same thing to the other side. And so now it's nice and folded. And so when somebody opens it up, they'll open up this side and then they can stick their finger in that little notch to open up the rest of it. So now at this point, you will want to make sure that you fill it before you close up the other side. But I am just going to kind of walk you through how to close it up. So you'll want to take your gift card and place it inside. It's nice, it can actually go in this way. If you want to put in a little bit of shred in there or some tissue, even a couple of little pieces of candy or something like that, that could be fun. And then you'll want to then do the same thing with the last two flaps here. So I'm just folding it in slightly at those score marks. And then the same thing on this side. And there you go. You could secure it with stickers if you want. Another fun way to finish that off is with a little bit of ribbon. You can make this into an ornament. You can hang it from the tree if you'd like. This can be used for all different occasions, not just for the holidays, but for, you know, birthdays and anniversaries. Anytime you're giving a little gift card, this works out perfect for it.